So thanks everybody for joining us. We're kicking off the GLA Summit today here, talking about how to help write the web interface for GCentral. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining us today. I'm excited for all the talks that we're going to have. This is pretty cool. Let's see. So starting it off, I wanted to talk about the hashtag Our Giants Are Female. For this, we've chosen Katherine Johnson as our giant. She's an American mathematician. For those of you who are not familiar with Our Giants Are Female, it's a way of raising awareness about contributions to the field of science and engineering and programming by women, because a lot of the history has been not super focused on the contribution of women. So trying to raise awareness about how much actually happened because of women. So she's an American mathematician who did calculations on orbital mechanics when she was working at NASA, and those calculations ended up being really critical to the success of some US crewed space flights. And she was the first African-American woman to work as a NASA scientist. Maybe you saw the movie Hidden Figures. She was one of the main characters. Oops. Switch. There we go. You guys can see my screen still. Cool. So this is what we'll talk to you guys about today. First of all, we'll talk a little bit about who we are, what is GCentral, and then we're going to show you our website. We have a new website that is about to be launched that you guys probably haven't seen yet. And then we'll get into the meat and bones of how to contribute to that website, and Derrik's going to be showing you that stuff. But first I'll talk about who we are. So I'm Danielle Jobe. You can call me Danny if you know me. I'm a CLA and a board member at GCentral, and I work at VI Technologies in the Netherlands, where I'm a software architect, and I like LabVIEW. Derrik, you can introduce yourself.
I'm Derrik. I'm not a CLA. I used to be a CLA, but I'm bad about keeping up with points and let it lapse, and I am regretting that now because I'm trying to go through the CLAD process and all that, and remote proctored exams are really fun right now. But I've got a bunch of interests in and out of LabVIEW in development, so I spend a lot of my time making a whole bunch of stuff work with LabVIEW projects, and have recently got into web development a little bit more seriously. So I'm helping out GCentral with their new website project.
Thanks. I saw that there was a little bang on when Derrik was talking. I muted my mic when he talked, so hopefully that helped. And then behind the curtain, we've got the other board members at GCentral. So that's Chris Cilino, who's the president and treasurer, Quentin Aldrich, who's the board secretary, Elijah Carey, who's another board member, and François Nomanda, who is another one of the board members. So yeah, we meet periodically to try to make this GCentral stuff happen. And I wanted to give a special thanks to Devin Chan, who was our volunteer who's been working on the UI and UX design. He studied psychology at UC Santa Cruz, which makes him, particularly understanding about the experience of users. And he did a UX design immersive course at General Assembly. This guy has made so much of this happen. Between him and Derrik, none of us would have been able to get off the ground. So super awesome. And super awesome guy with some contact info. If you see his stuff and you're like, wow, that was incredible, you can contact him and work with him too. Pleasure. So what is GCentral? The motive, or the idea behind all of it was, how do we find each other's code as part of the LabVIEW community? How do we discover code? And what you find is that we have a fractured ecosystem. We've got VIPM, which is JKI's package manager, which ships with LabVIEW that most of us are probably familiar with. We've got NIPM, which is NI's solution to distributing packages, and a lot of that is for LabVIEW drivers and such. And then you have GPM, which is MGI's package manager for project-specific package installation. So you've got 3 different package managers with 3 different package types. So if you want to find code, you have to pick one of these 3 to look at. So there was an idea. What if we could create one central place to discover and share all of our G code, independent of what that package type is? So from that, GCentral was born, and this is from that first meeting where they first came up with the idea of having a central place to find G code. So there's Chris Cilino, Q, Fab, Jeff K, who's the guy who first invented LabVIEW, Brian Huber, and Michael Avalulis. They sat around, had some snacks, and they talked about this problem and the fact that we want to have a central place. And from there, we got started, bringing everything together. So BI packages, NI packages, and G packages in one location. So this is not a new package manager. I want to clarify. We're not trying to fracture the ecosystem, or we're just trying to bring everything together so that you don't have to look in all these different places to find reused G code. So it's a central location, all of that reused G code. It's going to index all of the repositories for G package manager, NI package manager, and VI package manager in one place. So you just search here and it'll be like searching all 3 of those at the same time. But it's not just about finding code. We also wanted to make it easy to share your code. Because sharing is kind. So anyone who has ever tried to release your code to the LabVIEW Tools Network knows that it's kind of a pain. Maybe you've done it. So we wanted to make it really easy to upload your packages, independent of what package type you want to use with the whole community. So this is with minimal or maybe no gatekeeping. This is going to be up to the community to decide how we want to do that. So that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Derrik, and he's going to show us the GCentral website, the new website, and where we are with it.
All right, so this is running locally here in my development machine. We do also have a testing domain set up that we can do more public tests with. But basically what we've got so far is a design refresh on the existing content and still some blanket content that we're filling in content for. But this is all of the design that Devin has provided for us, and I am doing my best to make sure I reproduce that. But we've got links to different resources, and this is repopulating the web server cache. So some of these page loads are going to be slow. Where you can find information about GCentral and what's going on. There'll be resources to other community links, different partners, like the LabVIEW Wiki. So the LabVIEW Wiki, you can't go to this page just yet, but there will be links to LabVIEW Wiki pages on the current GCentral website. This is where all the recordings of all of these sessions will be showing up after this event is done. But the main thing we're interested in is providing the capability of finding packages no matter which package repository they're in. So far we have indexing of the G package manager and VIPM community packages, and we'll be updating our indexer to also look at NI packages and other VI packages, which will be great because as we continue to build tooling around this platform, you'll be able to have a project that depends on multiple types of packages under one kind of tool instead of utilizing different tools. So we've got a search feature where you can find different packages. Take a look at the package and any notes that have been added for it. So all of this information is coming from the existing package repositories. We're just making it all accessible through one interface as opposed to having multiple interfaces that you would have to use. So did I miss anything, Danny? Anything else I should?
I don't think so. So as it is right now, like he's showing, we have the ability to search for packages, but what we need help with is the ability to upload and share your packages. So maybe I'll share my screen again. Share. Okay, cool. So that's where we are right now, but we need to move forward with what the next steps are now. And so like Chris mentioned in the chat, we're a nonprofit organization. We're entirely community run. So now is the time that we've gotten a little bit off and a little bit started, that we need to start bringing people in the community together to start developing this and working on this together. None of this can happen without all of us working together. And this is kind of like one of the first big LabVIEW community open source projects, which is really cool. So how can you help do that? We have a GitHub repository that has that code that's running that website that Derrik just showed us. So you can add issues to GitHub with features that you like or bugs you found. You can develop, so fork the repo, work on an issue, make a pull request, and you can donate. Of course, we can't do any of this without financial support. Nothing is free, so any donations would be super grateful. So to show you how we can develop and how you can do all this stuff on GitHub, I'm going to turn it to Derrik again. I think you're muted. I think you've been muted.
I definitely was. So let's start that again. So here is the GitHub repository for our project. It's at github.com/GCentral/website. And this is where you'll find all the code that is on the currently deployed website. And we're using the Git Flow Workflow. So we've got a separate develop branch where we're doing all the live development on, but we're also using forks of this so that each contributor has their own copy of the repository they're working on, and then they can send us pull requests to get their contributions added into the main repository. And we'll actually be taking a look at that today. I can't quite practice that, so hopefully I don't booger that up. But if you go to this website and if you go to the repository and you're interested in contributing or finding out more, you can head to the wiki, or down here in the README for the repository, you'll find a link to the GitHub Wiki. And we've got some instructions set up for how to set up the development environment. So perhaps you're doing your development in a virtual machine like I am. I'm using VirtualBox here. What software you would need to get started. This is web development outside of LabVIEW, so we're listing a bunch of software preferences. But if you do your own web development already, you can use whatever tools you're familiar with. And then instructions for generating your fork, starting your feature branch, and then I'm still working on some of the documentation for that. But the idea is that this GitHub Wiki will be kind of the one-stop shop for figuring out how to contribute. We also have some descriptions on our workflow. So what the forking workflow is. We have links to the Atlassian documentation on the forking workflow and on Yeah, and then linking back to our development environment setup, describing our different branches and how kind of Git Flow and forking workflow work. So you could feel free to read these over and help us out, because if it's just me doing all the web development, it's going to take forever. And it would be really nice down the road, once we get some more of the features implemented that we have planned, you'd be able to use GCentral and its tooling to maybe automate your CI pipeline a little bit more by having a tool that can install. You can have one tool that'll install everything that can be installed through NI Package Manager, GPM, or VIPM, just to help streamline a lot of that, setting new developers up with a development environment, making sure all the common packages and stuff are installed. But so when you want to contribute, the first thing you need to do is make a fork. I already have a fork, so it won't let me make another fork of this repository. I think I actually have to open it up here. Yeah, here I'm logged in. So if I go to my copy of the repository, as soon as I navigate to it. So here is my fork of it. So this is my own copy of the repository. I'm not working directly in the GCentral repository. Just it gives that one extra layer of separation in case I make any goofs or do anything weird with my repository. It won't affect the official repository. But we see I've got a copy of the develop branch here. I've got some of the initial stuff I was working on that I pushed to the GCentral repository. And right now we're going to show me contributing to this new feature. So to give a demo of that feature, we'll look at some actual LabVIEW code. So I've been working on developing some initial prototypes and versions of a LabVIEW API wrapper for our systems. And so this basically does the same thing as the search on the website. So if I do CLI console and I run this, I get the same listing as here. Oh, that's not what I wanted to click on. Here we can see we've got console, anti-doc, anti-doc CLI, compose CI, G# framework, HTTP REST client. So we're working on the tooling to allow people to build their own tools utilizing this. So the idea, like Danny said, we're not making a new package manager. We're creating tooling to work with all of the existing package systems in a more cohesive manner. So again, right now we just have GPM and VIPM community. We'll be updating the indexer to pull NIPM and all of those. And then this tooling will allow you to write your own tools or build this functionality into your own tools to help leverage shared code in the community ecosystem. So if we take a look at what's going on here, I've only got two functions implemented so far, just as a demo and kind of a style guideline to start documenting. We've got the list packages, and I want to look at where are my tests? List packages. This is just going to return all of the packages in the repository, so we'll let that cook for 30 seconds that it takes. But we could take a look at some of the LabVIEW that's being written, the web request that's coming back, the JSON we're getting back, converting that JSON into our package array, and then getting actual LabVIEW object instances that we can work with and do things like use property nodes or property sub-VIs to pull out the information and display it. So here we can see here, now we've got the full list of packages. And what actually takes the most time is doing this image processing. So Still working on some stuff to cache those images and cache the resized versions of those to speed that process up. But we've got 2 of these example API calls done so far, and these are just making web requests to API endpoints on the website. And then these demo apps just let you pick which server you're going to use with. Normally, you don't have to set this, and we'll just use the live version. But if you're doing development testing, you can configure whether you're running local. So I've got an Apache web server that I'm running in this development environment. Or you can do our public testing server, which right now that'll give all the same results. Or you can do the live server, which right now won't give anything because none of this has been made live yet. But so I've got a bunch of these APIs written, and I want to get them up into GitHub. So what I'm going to do is I'm using Tortoise Git. So one of the things I'm going to do first is I'm going to pull changes from the upstream repository. So I'm going to be pulling any updates that have been done since I started working on this API into my local copy. So I'm going to pull from the remote, and I'm going to pull straight from the develop branch. And we should see that I get some I'm going to get some conflicts because I made some git ignore changes that aren't present on the other branch. But okay, let me revert that first. Now I can pull, and I'm going to pull straight from the develop branch. So this would be a situation that happens if while you're working on your feature branch that you're doing in your fork of the repository, somebody else has worked on their feature, got it done, and that pull request was submitted to GCentral. You need to pull that in before you do your pull request in case anything might interact or cause some odd behavior. Okay, so now it's completed successfully. We can see there's a lot of delete. This is version controlled, so we don't need. Oh, why are they still here? These should be gone. All right, I'm not sure exactly why it's not getting rid of these. I'll have to look into that. But what I want to do is we want to get this LabVIEW API pushed in. So I'll worry about that. I think something's just not updating here. It deleted it, but it didn't actually get rid of it for some reason. Okay, so now I don't have all the unversions, the untracked items that we didn't want. So I'm going to add everything that I've developed so far and initial demonstration of package, listing, and in LabVIEW. I'm going to go ahead and commit this, and then I'm going to push it. This is going to go to my fork of the repository. So I'm not pushing directly to the GCentral repository. I'm pushing to my fork. I'm now going to go into GitHub, and we can see that this had a recent push less than a minute ago. So GitHub very nicely gives you some big green buttons to press when you're working on a fork. So I'm going to refresh this so we can see those changes here. So now we've got the LabVIEW API and the web, and you can either click this big green button. If that green button's not showing up whenever you're on one of your branches, you also get a pull request button here that you can click on. So one of the things you'll you'll need to do every time is you'll always want to make sure you are going to do a pull request to the GCentral develop branch. We don't ever do direct commits to the master branch. We only want that to track currently deployed versions. So I'm going to be going from my repository and this LabVIEW API branch, and I'm going to be I'm going to do a pull request from there into the GCentral repository on the develop branch. And I can click create pull request. This is going to look a little different because I am also a maintainer on the GCentral repository. So I also get the button to say, yes, accept this. But then normally at this point, one of us would get notified about the pull request that was submitted. And we can see here now, it's actually transitioned me to the GCentral repository. I'm not on my repository anymore. And this is where we can review it. We can look at changes that have been made, any code that's shown up. Unfortunately, it's LabVIEW, so not really helpful for looking at in a web browser, but we could see which items are changed. We would be able to review these, check for any styling, check to make sure nothing else conflicts or breaks anything else in the repository. And we can discuss and provide feedback, suggestions. We can also add our own updates to this pull request. But down the road, eventually, somebody will hopefully approve it and appreciate your contributions.
Derek, I have a question. I see up at the top that it's feature/LabVIEW API number some 56, I think. How did you link this fork and this pull request to that issue?
It creates an issue on its own. So every time you submit a pull request, GitHub creates an issue that you'd be able to look at. So any other commits that get done, any other fixes that get done, or referenced anywhere else, so whether it's on like one of the Kanban boards that are part of the projects tab, or in the issues discussion, we should see this. So if I open up issues, there should be a 56 somewhere. Okay, I guess it doesn't actually list it here.
I think you can also link what you currently have, what you're about to merge in, or your commit with an existing issue. And if it closes it, you can use keywords like closes number 56 or something like that. And then that'll automatically close the issue once that pull request gets merged in.
So it looks like with GitHub, it just, anything that's a pull request, it's following the issue numbers, but
There. Is it just for me that he's muted? I think we're muted there.
Yeah, somehow, I don't know if you muted. If you click the mute that's in the top of the stage, it'll mute everybody. So I don't know if you clicked it. Okay. All right. So the NI's LV compare tool is great. You can set that up in your Git settings. So if I wanted to set that up, I don't have that set up yet, but where do I set up the diff tools? It's been a while. Oh, diff viewer. So you can go to advanced. I can add one specifically for .vi, and I forget exactly where it is on disk, but you can add that LV compare and LV diff tools to your Git environment of choice. So whenever you diff that, but that has to be on your system for that tool to work. Inside of the browser where we're reviewing these changes, those tools don't get used.
Also, for clarity, the code that's behind this website, aside from that particular tool that he just showed, is not written in LabVIEW. So most of the work that people will be doing to contribute to this will not be done with LabVIEW code. So we would be able to just do a standard diff like you would in any other text language.
I'll be showing off the rest of the website here in the source in a minute. So we'll get this finished up. So now that I've completed this pull request as a GCentral maintainer, oh, I didn't need to add that comment. Okay. Like I said, doing this live, I'm bound to only have to pay attention to what I'm doing. So we're going to confirm this merge because we do want this example in the repository. And now if I go back to the code and I look at the develop branch, we've now got the LabVIEW GCentral API folder. So anybody that is pulling their own copy of the develop branch can start to work on that. And some of the ways that we're flagging things that need to be done is people are submitting issues. So like here, we've got Sam Taggart has submitted something that he'd like to see this tool be used for. And then we'll have internal discussions. These are also available to other people as well, but where we can prioritize what tasks we're working on and what features we're going to be adding. We can discuss how we're going to do that, any issues that might come up with that. Things like that. As Danny said, that is the little bit of LabVIEW code that's in the project so far is this API that's being developed to allow people to develop LabVIEW tools leveraging this system. But the website itself and all of the backend code is all written in PHP. And then we've got some JavaScript for the front end. So this is using the Symfony PHP framework. It is it's a framework I'm familiar with. I've been doing a little bit of LabVIEW here, a little bit of web development here and there for years, and PHP was the big thing when I first started doing web development. And then Symfony provides a lot of tooling and already available capability out of the box for doing database interfacing, setting up PHP classes to mirror your database tables. So if we, just for a quick example, when you do a post to the API packages search, we're going to pull out the parameters that you provide. And we can take a look at what that looks like on the LabVIEW side here in a minute. We're going to call our search packages function. And this is where we use our the doctrine query builder that's part of Symfony to kind of more easily glue all of our different tables and our tables that reference each other together. And then we're just doing some scoring for the different packages we have to prioritize, based on keyword, whole word matches, partial word matches. And we return the packages and the scores that are generated with that. And then that all gets converted to JSON and sent back. So in the LabVIEW side of that, when we dive down, so we've got some search options that aren't implemented yet in the back end, but just kind of accounting for them in the future. But you can submit the terms that you're looking for and what options you may be interested in, group them together, flatten it to JSON, and then we just do an HTTP post to send that to the web server. And then the response that comes back, I then parse back out the packages, generate our package objects, and now everything's in LabVIEW code and familiar to work with. One of the nice things that this does is if you are running in an environment that is running the backend code in development mode, when this runs, we're going to get a debug link that I can then paste into a web browser. And now I can look at everything that happened as part of that request. And usually what we'll be interested in is, maybe optimizing the database calls. So here we can see for all of that search, it just did 2 queries. And that's because we individually searched for each of the terms that were submitted. But you can see how long the query took, how many different statements it evaluated. So there's a lot of really powerful backend tooling as well when you're doing initial development and debugging of the code. Any errors that come up or exceptions that are generated can be listed here. And there's really a lot in here to dive into. So I'm not going to, but you can get some information on what's received by the server, what's returned from the server, things like that. So just some more additional functionality that working within a framework like Symfony provides. I think that's anything else specific you can think of, Danny?
Yeah, I don't think so. So, I mean, that's kind of a high-level introduction to what the code is doing under the hood and what kind of thing you'd be working with if you wanted to help develop that front end or the back end. So you would get to learn some stuff about PHP or develop or deepen the knowledge that you already have about that. HTML, JavaScript, CSS, all that fun stuff. So not strictly G, but enabling us to do our G coding better.
And then just as an additional note that I forgot to mention, any of our front end interactivity is implemented using Vue.js, which is a very nice framework for doing front end web development. So all of our search boxes throughout the website, these are both implemented here and on the homepage as a Vue.js component, so that we get that functionality that we write once and now works across both of them, where it does all the formatting for the search query and things like that.
James has a really good question. He wants to know, how do we test any changes, if there's any unit tests to see if we've broken anything?
So part of that's still some of the documentation that I am working on finishing. So if we go to the wiki here, setting up the development environment, this will detail, again, the software you need, with the main thing being this web server, and then the dependency managers for PHP and for JavaScript. And then this is what's missing down here. This week, I'll be going through that process on a brand new fresh VM. And I'll be doing a screen capture of that, as well as taking screenshots for this. So there'll be a YouTube video walking through that process. But that will let you do local testing. And that's where, in these examples, I can pick which API server I'm working with. So this is a separate global call that gets done just to store which server we're working with. And then every time I'm initializing an instance of the API handler, after that, it'll use the configured one. But when you're doing your local development testing, this will let you test these features out locally. Of course, if you're just testing web stuff out locally, you can just go to localhost and test all of that. Eventually, I'll be adding into the source code all of the testing payloads, so you can pre-populate your local copy of a database you're running. You can pre-populate that with stuff, so when you go to the package listing, you don't get a blank page, which would be kind of really important for testing features. But there's this, and then in the LabVIEW code so far, I've just got these two tests that are part of. I can get rid of these guys now. I've got this test folder where I'm testing each of the calls that are being done, and just kind of simply displaying the information to make sure I'm getting back valid data, capturing any of the errors that happen. So if you're on the LabVIEW side, you've got that. On the web side, there are no tests yet other than manually testing the pages. I'm working on that. And if you know about testing web stuff, I'd certainly appreciate those contributions as well. Is it possible to develop a mobile? Oh, sorry, what was that, Danny?
Oh, do we have an issue for making unit tests in the GitHub? Because that's a really good point, and we should make an issue for that.
I do not believe so.
This is what.
So Nevis asks, is it possible to develop a mobile APK in LabVIEW? No. There is nothing in LabVIEW that you can compile that would run on mobile. What you could do is you could develop a web interface using something like LabVIEW NXG's WebVI module, where you can create a web interface and open that web interface on a mobile device. But there's nothing that would allow you to directly run LabVIEW applications on a mobile device.
Cool. So we talked about what if somebody comes to GCentral and they see the way it's working and they think, oh man, it would be so nice if it had this particular feature, or oh, I found a bug. Can we show how to create a new issue so that they can report that?
Yep. Yeah, so if you just come to the GCentral /website, so when you first come to the repository, you'll land here. You can go to the Issues tab, click New Issue. And actually, if I refresh this page, we just get a new comment somewhere, but it's one of the notifications got on my phone. But you can generate a new issue. So we need to add unit testing.
And we have projects that you can add it to also to categorize whether it's for front end or back end, or it's a user story, and so on. Just shared the link in the chat for the issues. Thanks for sharing that.
So we'll just submit that new issue. Once that's submitted, now we can go into projects. And oh, I forgot to. So now that we have this issue, I can tag it as a user story. Now that it's tagged as a user story, it'll show up in our projects list. I don't know how it's sorting, or do I have to manually add it here? No. Okay, I am apparently unfamiliar with why it's not sending this over to the user story.
I think it might not be in a specific category yet. I think you have to, on the agile board, use the plus button there and then add the issue.
This is just letting me add a note. It's not letting me pick a specific. That's what. Yeah, I'm not.
Add
but,
cards, one new up there to the right.
Ah, there it is. Unit testing capabilities.
I mean, you can drag and drop that card once you take a look at it into the category that you want to add it to.
There we go. Okay. I'm still learning as well. So now we could start discussing this user story and figuring out when we're going to prioritize it, when we're going to start implementing it. Anything that we do get done, we'll archive.
Most of the way that we're going to be working on all of this and have been working on all of this is sort of an agile workflow in the GCentral GitHub there. But if we find that people are contributing a lot and getting really involved, we also have a Slack channel, and we also have bi-weekly sync ups for the people working on it. So if you start working on stuff and you want to plug into that, you can reach out to us and get involved with that also. That'll kind of keep everybody on the same page. That being said,
Pointing out is agreeing with setting up a Docker environment for the development environment. So we'll definitely look into that.
Yeah, so I think that about covers it. Unless people have any questions or things they want to make sure that we check out in the meantime. So maybe we can open it up now for discussion and questions. You can, I guess, type questions in the chat.
Yeah, people can request to start sharing audio and video. If you let us know in chat that you have a long-winded question that you prefer to voice chat, we can maybe do that. But don't just click the request to share video and audio. We will not accept that. So the release workflow is we are following Git Flow internal on the GCentral website. So if we look at here and I go to these links, there's Git Flow Workflow.
I can share your screen.
Yes, I definitely do. Thank you. Okay, so internal to the main repository, we'll be using Git Flow for development integration and then release integration and final testing before we release. So we currently have a master and develop branch. Develop branch is where we'll receive in all of the contributions. We're not going to typically have feature branches within the GCentral repository itself. Those are going to be all on the contributors repositories. But then when it's time to release, we'll create a new release branch where we'll take whatever's currently in the development branch that it's ready to be released, do all of our testing, any fixes, anything we need to do on that release branch where we can be isolated from the develop branch. So anybody that's working on a new feature while we're finishing up a release can still do pull requests into the develop branch without affecting our separated release code. Once that's ready, we push that into master. And then any changes that were made to get that release ready will get pulled back into develop as well. Do they show an example of that? No. But the nice thing about working in this separate release branch is that in this interim right here, other contributors could be still having code added to the GCentral repository.
And there's a link to this website in the GCentral Wiki, right?
Yes. Yeah, so if you go to Wiki and you go to contribution workflow, I should probably add another link like right up at the top, nice and clear. But we've got a link to it here. We've got a link to it here, and that'll bring you to this brings you to the forking workflow, because that's how the contributors are going to contribute. But then from here, you can get to the Git Flow workflow. Atlassian has some really good documentation on different workflows to use with Git to alleviate some of the issues that can come up from working in teams. You developed the mobile APK using LabVIEW and the MIT APK inverter. Do you have links to that at all? That sounds interesting. I mean, you don't do, so there's not really a use case for any of this project to be converted to a mobile app. You don't do LabVIEW development on web, but I am definitely interested in looking at that. Sounds interesting for other projects. Is it possible to use the NI web server? For this project, we're not. Oh, he's got a question. Oh, now it's showing me the rest of the question. Sorry, it was hiding everything. The NI web server on Linux OS to deploy web VIs. You're sorry, but you lost part of the person. You don't know if this was approached. So we are not using any LabVIEW web technologies for hosting or generating the web pages for this. This is all of the backend is PHP code for like doing the searching, the parameters that the API wrapper or the website provides, and then we're returning a JSON object with the results. Front-end code that might be doing some interactive behavior, like our search box, is written in JavaScript. And this is deployed to an Apache web server that I've got running in my machine. And then, we've got web servers set up for public access. You can deploy web VIs to Apache. And there are links for that. If you're doing web services, you have to use an NI web server. I'm not familiar with if they've got the web server available for Linux. So I can't provide specific guidance on that. Okay, so that was a web application in LabVIEW that was turned into an APK. Is LabVIEW Web Services supported on Linux OS? KB article here. Available without web services support. So looks like you're kind of limited on what you can do with LabVIEW web technologies on Linux.
Any other questions or comments or anything that they want to bring up in the chat? Otherwise, it's time to break out into those networking groups. Okay, cool. Well, like we mentioned before, the biggest ways that you can help us in this effort is either by creating issues in GitHub, working on the code in GitHub, and giving us money. We need donations, like Chris mentioned in the chat. It's all community developed. Everybody is volunteers here, but we also have operations costs. We also have server costs. So all your donations are tax deductible since we're a nonprofit organization. Not really sure how that works if you live in a country outside of the US, if you donate. Maybe somebody knows about that. But yeah, thank you everyone for your time. You can check out our GitHub here. If you have any questions or if you just want to reach out to any of us, this is my email, Derrik's email, and this is the designer who made the website.
Do I have a GCentral email? I don't think I have a GCentral
email. Get you a GCentral email.
So you can't contact me there.
Okay, but that's my email.
If you do have web questions and you're looking at doing more web stuff in LabVIEW, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, find me. I see some people have already found me. So yeah, it'd be cool to get more people aware of what's possible with web, not just in LabVIEW, but out of LabVIEW. This was originally prototyped in LabVIEW using web VIs and web services, but the development flow kind of isn't there once you start getting into a full scope website that's going to have users, and there's not great database tooling available within LabVIEW yet. So I've got a bunch of information about doing outside of LabVIEW web development if anybody's curious about that. But I think we need to release the floor so Chris can get going, because I think he's actually going to be in this room. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks everyone for joining us, and look forward to working with y'all in the future. See y'all later.